What is happening, Stokastic NASCAR fans? Good to see you guys again. Terry McBride here. They brought me back again this week, filling in. I think this is the last time probably for this season, but it's super fun, I think, because the way it's set up, the way I don't think we could have chosen two completely different kinds of races to talk about
Right.
from weekend to weekend. So I'm psyched to be here again. This looks like a really fun one. It's a track even a guy like me knows, obviously Daytona, big track, one of these super speedway races, totally different setup for everything that's, we care about for DFS. So fortunately, I've got Chris Pennell here to take us all through every single piece of this race, talk strategy. We're going to talk track. We're going to talk danger, all the different things that go into a Daytona race. Chris, how you doing, buddy? How did your weekend go last weekend with the race that we talked about last weekend?
What's up, Terry? Looking forward to another show with you here. But yeah, last weekend did not go too bad. Fortunately, a lot of guys that we talked about ended up doing pretty well, kind of went how we expected for the most part. So I was happy with that.
Nice.
This week, it's going to be kind of hard to project what's going to happen. It's going to be a bit of a chaotic race. Like you said, even you know about Daytona. It's a chaotic track. This is the playoff cutoff race. There's even more in the line than normally would be. So I'm expecting wrecks and a bunch of them. And we'll talk about roster construction of how we should build to anticipate that.
Yeah, it seems like a really interesting race. As I was like preparing for the show, I had a little bit more time to lead up to this show this week, so I was able to do a little bit more prep. And just in reading about it with the playoff implications, with the nature of the track and the races at this track and everything, and just everything that goes into the mix here, it seems like a super fun race. So I actually grabbed 3 FanDuel lineups. I'm just throwing 3 into the 10K to first FanDuel tourney, but I've got 2 of them built out. I think they're okay. I was using our top drivers tool, which is over on the site. You guys can check that out. But I think I got 2 good ones, and they're probably a little bit chalky, but we'll see what happens with the third one. I wanted to build that after we talk it through on the show. So we'll get into all that stuff you guys see over on the panel over there, or the different topics we'll dive into. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe. I should actually look at the run sheet, see what we're supposed to be talking about real quick here. We've got free ownership projections for MLB up on the site today. So I'll be around coming right back for the MLB live before lock after this show. So if you're playing that slate, you can check out ownership projections for free up on the site. We've also got everything for MLB night slates on DraftKings is for free for the rest of the year. So those weird little 2-gamer, 3-gamer slates at the end of the night, they start 9:45 on the East Coast or 9:43 sometimes. Those weird little ones where you can make some decent money, honestly, because they've got nice prize pools, and you can get there with weird constructions. All those tools are free anyway. So if you want to give it a shot, check out the tools behind the paywall and figure out if you want to subscribe. It's a great time to do it. We've got a bunch of different new sports starting off with football and baseball and basketball and hockey coming up. So it's a great time to check out some free stuff and make sure that you want to subscribe here, which I can't recommend more. All right, that's some business out of the way. Let's dive into this thing. It seems like there are some major playoff implications at stake. As I understand it, we had Kurt Busch drop out of the playoffs, right? So that opened up a second playoff spot. And we've got 2 guys who are somewhat locked into those spots unless somebody who is yet to win a race this year wins this race or finishes with a certain amount of points. Is that, do I have that correct?
That's correct. So we had Ryan
so what
Blaney.
are the implications?
Yeah. So we have Ryan Blaney, Martin Truex Jr. Those are the guys that are currently in on points. Ryan Blaney is pretty much safe here. Martin Truex Jr., he's the one that's going to have to worry about a new winner. So a guy like Eric Almirola, Brad Keselowski, Eric Jones, if he sees those kind of guys up front, I'm sure he's going to be sweating a little bit. But I think for the most part, we should expect a repeat winner. So I would assume they're both going to advance. But it is certainly possible to track like this that we could end up seeing a new winner. So it's going to be pretty fun to see how that plays out.
Okay. And we've got a pretty big pool of guys that could fill that role. As I was reading one of the articles on the site, I think it was Phil's, where he kind of was breaking down just that full pool. And it's a bunch of guys that are ranking out fairly well in our projections. They're names that, even if you casually pay attention to the sport like I do. So what's the overall pool? You just named a few. Are there any other key guys that are in that pool that might be pushing the limit a little bit more, trying to win this race to steal one of those playoff spots?
Yeah, I mainly mentioned the guys that I think have the best potential to do it. But if you're looking at the NASCAR playoff standings, it's everybody above Corey LaJoie and above, which I believe he's currently sitting 31st in the standings. So I don't have the list right in front of me, so I want to miss a name here or anything. But if you're looking at the NASCAR standings on the website, just look above Corey LaJoie. And anybody that's not locked in the playoffs, that's eligible to make it in. They can win today.
Okay. Yeah. And it is, like I was saying, it is a long and, somewhat familiar list. So I think it's worth at least paying a little bit of attention to. It makes some sense. But to me, the thing that's going to really add to the race is just another element of chaos in what is already a chaotic kind of a race. Just talk about, I mean, how many major wrecks do we expect to see? How many, how much of an impact is that on this race in general? And then just how much of a downstream impact does that have on your roster construction? And what can you do to just either offset that, or are there guys that you specifically chase? Like, I know I'm throwing you like 6 questions at the same time, so take them however you want, but is the ability to avoid getting into a wreck a definable skill that some of these guys have that you can actually chase?
So I'll answer the last one here first. It does seem like some drivers are better at avoiding wrecks or not, but a lot of times that can be just drivers that are riding around the back, just ready to avoid a wreck, not guys that are really competing for wins for the most part. So you'll see guys like David Reagan, Cody Ware, BJ McLeod, who we all talked about last week, how we just don't play these guys because they're slow. But at a track like this, they know they can't win the race. They're riding around the back and they'll take their top 20. It's a decent payday for them compared to what they usually run. But other drivers, Denny Hamlin, Bubba Wallace, Ryan Blaney, those are kind of your better super speedway drivers, Chase Elliott, that don't tend to get caught up in wrecks too much, but that can be more lucky than not. So it's really hard to call it a skill set, but some drivers are obviously better at riding in the pack than others. But as far as wrecks in roster construction, it's a bit of a doozy to go through here. Typically, we can see close to 20 drivers get wrecked out of this race. That's certainly a possible scenario here. So you have to build mostly based on place differential for the most part. This offers you the best floor and best ceiling combination, because a guy like Noah Gragson starting in the very back, and he's pretty cheap. You wouldn't normally call him arguably one of the better plays in the slate, but there's a real chance he could finish top 10 in this race and be the best scorer. Same for Bubba Wallace. So for the most part, you want to target place differential, but for tournaments, I don't mind taking a couple drivers here and there inside the top 20, top 15.
Okay. And you hit on 2 guys that it will definitely touch on because of where they land in our top drivers tool. The Gragson play is really interesting because he looks like he's going low owned for a guy who at that price ranks out where he does in our tools. So I definitely wanted to pick your brain on that one. I'm glad to hear that he's a little bit on your radar too. As far as the race goes, are there differences in Daytona between this race and the Daytona 500, which is earlier in the year? Differences like, are there things that are caused by the weather, the heat in Florida? Like, what are the different factors that go in and maybe change this race, change this track? Or is it essentially the same kind of a setup and the same kind of a race we would see earlier in the year?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same kind of concept here, because the Daytona 500, that's kind of like the championship for NASCAR. Obviously, still the championship race at the end of the year, but that's the most popular race. It's a crown jewel event. Everyone wants that Daytona 500 trophy. So everyone's going, completely as hard as they can. And we're going to see that here too. It's the playoff cutoff race. Guys have things you've got to sell out for a win here. Some of these guys that are on the cut line that need to make it into the playoffs. So we're going to see a very aggressive style of racing. As far as the weather is concerned, we get the February race in Florida. It's still pretty warm out there, but for this weekend's race, obviously it's at nighttime, but it looks like right now we have a lot of weather in the forecast. We saw the Xfinity Series race last night kick off around 11 p.m. Eastern and end to like 1:30, I believe. It's raining at the track as of right now, so we'll probably end up seeing a later start time, but overall the racing shouldn't change.
Okay. And that's just going to throw another element of chaos into the mix, in addition to the playoff implications, the track and all that stuff. So seems like a really fun setup to me. So I think that's interesting. As far as roster construction now, where we want to chase more the positioning points and the finishing points, as opposed to just laps led on this kind of a track, if I got that correct, and correct me if I've got that wrong, please. But what kind of an approach are you taking to these roster constructions? Are you chasing that stack the back strategy? Is that like a primary component of this race? What are you doing with how you're approaching most of your lineups in this race?
Yeah, it's mainly going to be a stack the back approach. I do have some guys that filter in that are starting closer to the front. Guys like Ryan Blaney, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, just because I think they have top 5, top 10 potential. And even though they don't offer you as much PD upside, I still want some guys that can potentially win the race, and it could be set for Ross Chastain. But this is one of those weeks where if you do have access to Fantasy Cruncher with Stokastic, it's a great week to build groups, because that's the main thing I am doing this week. So for what I have right now currently in my group settings over on Fantasy Cruncher, 0 to 2 drivers starting inside the top 12, then 0 to 3 drivers starting from 13th to 24th, and then I want 3 to 6 drivers starting 25th on back. And I think that's usually the best way to approach a super speedway.
Okay, so we're stacking at least 3 drivers from the back of the field, and there's a lot of good names there. They're obviously rating out prime time in our projections here. And then is it just like the premium drivers, the big names from up front, the guys that you kind of trust to maybe be able to win this race, or like you said, top 5 that are the guys you're more willing to take from that top group that's starting up up toward the pole?
Yeah, so looking at some of my exposures right now, I did do a few 150 max runs before I get on here. I'm getting, like I said, quite a bit of Hamlin, quite a bit of Byron, Blaney, Chastain, Kyle Busch, just guys I think that had the potential to win the race. And we'll talk about Eric Jones in a little bit, but I do think he's a sneaky contender to steal win here.
Okay. And then you said 0 to how many from the top 10 of the field? Because it looks like if we're going down the tools, Kevin Harvick starting 7th, I think, is the highest ranked guy. And he is, 2/3 of the way down the list of these drivers here.
Yeah.
Highest starting position rather.
Yeah. So for my driver starting 1st through 12, that's the group I do. You can make it 1st through 10th. It's pretty much splitting hairs there,
Yeah,
but I have it from 0 to 2 drivers. Usually it doesn't give me too many anyway. Usually we see a max of 1, but 0 to 2 is going to be the way I go with it.
Okay. And is it just because there's just not a lot of position changes available for those guys from the top of the field, and you're basically chasing a guy who's just got to lead most of the laps and win the race in a weird kind of a setup?
Yeah, so if you're starting in the top 12 at a super speedway, so the thing here with Dominator points is that you can't really project fast laps because since they're in a pack, they're pack racing, they're in the draft. The fast lap points are completely spread out. You cannot project them. That could go to anybody in the field here. So that just kind of nullifies half the Dominator points there. So the lap lead points, and everyone's interchanging the lead for the most part of the track like Daytona. So I don't really worry about Dominator points. And if you're starting in the top 12, you almost pretty much have to win the race. And with how much variance we see at a track like this, how many wrecks, it's just likely that you're not going to win. So I want some exposure to these guys because it's possible they could win, but for the most part, the chances are they'll probably not make it in.
Okay. All right. We're going to talk through the driver by driver in just a sec. Let me knock out a piece of business here. Let's see, for the Coke Zero Sugar 400. Not that they were paying us to do that business. I didn't have to mention the sponsor name there, but I got to say, I mean, Daytona track I enjoy for when I'm flipping around the TV, and if I see a Daytona race, I will actually stop. I actually do plan on watching this race and enjoy regular Coke. I've never had Coke Zero Sugar before. Might be good. Anywho, free plug for them. Speaking of plugs, Stokastic NASCAR with promo code NASCAR LBL. That's what you guys should be using if you want to check out a free package, 50% off your first week of a weekly package if you're a new subscriber over at the site. What that can get you access to is any of the different weekly plans. So if you're a NASCAR only guy, you just want to check out the NASCAR tools, NASCAR LBL, all caps, all one word, is your promo code to get 50% off your first week of a weekly as a new subscriber. If you want to check out all of the different tools from the Platinum plan, that includes everything for NASCAR, everything for baseball, everything for tennis and soccer and football starting up and hockey starting up and basketball, every single tool, every single sport we cover. It's just all in there. That's all in the Platinum plan. Same promo code, 50% off your first week of a weekly Platinum plan for a new user. None of those includes Fantasy Cruncher. That's always going to be a paid add-on at the checkout, but that's easy to add in to the same subscription window there. Join Stokastic Plus today. I really recommend it. Get in there, check it out. Promo code NASCAR LBL. Chris, let's sort it by, I guess we'll sort by FanDuel pricing because you're more on, that's where your larger lineup pool goes, right?
Correct. I'm fine with you. FanDuel's fine.
All right. So let's take a look by FanDuel pricing. We've got a few guys that rate out with reasonably high chances of being the top 5% scorers. The top guy in pricing is Chase Elliott, starting in the 2nd position. We just talked about the disadvantages for DFS purposes of starting up there. He's ranking out as the lowest end guy in our top 5% probability, but he's not like off the board in terms of that category. Ranks out with an okay projection compared to some of the guys. Is he worth spending any money on, or is he just kind of a price fade in that position?
Yeah, so the thing with, I should have mentioned this as far as roster construction is concerned, pricing really doesn't matter at a track like this. We've seen sometimes where there's about $20,000 on the table in the optimal lineup, so you can pretty much do whatever you want. FanDuel is a bit different since place differential, the scoring isn't there isn't as heavily based on that. So I'll probably end up using more salary over on FanDuel, but pricing won't be a concern for me. But as far as Chase Elliott is concerned, he is the favorite to win this race. He has been very good to super speedways this year. If I had to pick somebody to win, I would say Chase Elliott. That's not to say that he's probably going to win. It's, again, a lot of variance at a track like this. Over on DraftKings, I am playing less than 5% Chase Elliott. He has to win the race. He's going to have to dominate. And like I said, chances are that probably doesn't happen. But over on FanDuel, a little bit more inclined to play him because the place differential drop off, if he loses a couple of spots, isn't as steep. And it's mainly more so finishing position than anything. So I'll get to a little bit more Elliott over on FanDuel, but he's still pretty low in play for me across the board.
Okay. And that jives with what the tool's doing. So you'd probably be below the field, even on the FanDuel side, coming in around 20% owned, 22% owned on the last update.
Yeah, I currently have him, I believe, at 8 or 9%. So
okay. And then it sounds like you just have him almost entirely off the boards as opposed to the 24% that he's drawing on DK, which sounds like the field is getting over aggressive to that spot. Are there enough points on the board for him to be able to be viable for those people who are going to him there?
Yeah, I'm surprised he's going to be that popular. I think it's just because he's probably the most popular driver in NASCAR. He's been on a hot streak this year. But if he wins the race, just dominator points aside over on DraftKings, that's 46 points. It's much easier for a guy like Brad Keselowski to get 46 points today. He's going to have to lead a lot of laps. He's going to have to win the race. And like I said, I mean, I'd say there's probably about an 8 to 10% chance he wins. People are breaking in 26%. I don't see it happening.
Okay. Yeah. And it's not like you're getting away from the field if he does thread what sounds like a pretty thin needle there. So right. Seems like a pretty easy way to play to get away from DFS wise. Looking at the rest of that group up there now we get into the meat of it. All three of these drivers are owned in the 40% range on FanDuel. Ryan Blaney, Denny Hamlin, Bubba Wallace, starting 16th, 19th, and 30th, respectively. Bubba's leading the board in our projections. He's leading the board in our top 5 percentage probabilities. All those guys are equally owned. They're all, but a spread of 13.5 for Blaney down to 12.5 for Bubba. Do you have a favorite among that trio? And are you getting to all of these guys? And if so, like how much?
Yeah, so interesting thing here on DraftKings, I am underweight on all three of these guys just because of the ownership. But over on FanDuel, I'm more inclined to get to Ryan Blaney, Denny Hamlin because they don't offer as much place differential upside, but I think their finishing position upside is pretty much top 5. I mean, these are two of the best plate racers in all of NASCAR. Ryan Blaney, arguably the best one right now, did get some weight lifted off his shoulder after Kurt Busch announced that he's withdrawing from the playoffs, but he finished 5th at Atlanta, 4th at Daytona earlier in the season. If you're dating back to the past few seasons of these track types, he's got pretty much some of the overall best numbers, tied for the most wins and the second most top 5. So liking Blaney a lot. Denny Hamlin's won multiple Daytona races. He's one of the best plate racers in the series, a very similar play to Ryan Blaney. They're currently Ryan Blaney, Denny Hamlin, Bubba Wallace are all in my cash lineup over on FanDuel currently. So like these guys a ton. Bubba Wallace is the safest option here. Fully expecting him to be the highest owned driver on both sites, but it makes sense. Great plate racer, starting 30th. Hard to get away from, especially on DK where he's below $8,000.
Yeah, that's what stood out. I was just clicking between the two different sites and I was looking for where Bubba ranked because I have it sorted by price over there. And he's in like the middle of the board at 7,800. That seems like an extreme value play where you can grab a ton of points. Seems like an obvious lock for cash. Where would you be relative to the field on Bubba on DK, where he's coming in at 53% and like Blaney 48? It's not like you're offsetting that much. Blaney 48, Hamlin 44. Are you going around the field? Is Bubba a lock play on DK? Is he that good? Like where would you be relative to that 53%?
Yeah, I think that's way too high. Like I like these guys. I think they're good plays today, but I think people are going a little bit overboard because they got to remember anybody and everybody's got an equal chance of wrecking at a track like this. And it might not even be their fault. It could easily be a guy like Cody Ware that just messes something up and Denny Hamlin's in the wrong place at the wrong time. So looking at some of my exposures right now, I had Bubba Wallace coming in at 48%. So while that's still a good chunk, that's my highest owned driver. It's still underweight to the field. I think that's enough to be comfortable if he does well, but I don't want to go overboard. If he wrecks out, at least I'll have a little bit of leverage. As far as Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, I have 21% Blaney, 25% Hamlin, which I think it's a good amount for a driver starting inside the top 20, but I cannot get to the numbers that the field's getting to.
Okay. So it sounds, that sounds, roughly half, maybe a little bit more than half the field on those two. And then, the bubble play does look good, but as you mentioned, definitely the risk of anybody potentially wrecking out. Is there a little bit more safety in the fact that, like you talked about before, he's going to be at least starting the race in the back of the pack. Now, granted, he's going to be making his way into at least the middle of the field where all that chaos is bound to happen. Is there any safety in the fact that he's starting 30th there, or is the field just kind of chasing the name, the starting position, the stack the back concept, and maybe getting a little overexcited to him?
I think it's a little bit of everything. Now, the safety is certainly there, and that's why I do have more about Wallace than I have for guys like Ryan Blaney, Denny Hamlin, because let's say theoretically they all wreck out and finish around 40th place, looking at some of the potential scores. So Bubba Wallace is the first driver to wreck out. He gets -9 points, or if he finished 40th. I think there's only 37 cars in the field. So we're looking at -3 points. But if a guy like Denny Hamlin or if a guy like Ryan Blaney happens to wreck out, we're talking nearly negative 20 points. So even then you could still outscore those guys by 20 points, even though it's not going to look too pretty. So the floor is very safe for Bubba. The ceilings is much higher as well. So that's kind of the reason where I think everyone's flocking to Bubba. It makes sense, but there's plenty of pivots to get away from him in tournaments.
Yep, absolutely. And we'll pick that up. We'll talk about a bunch of these other guys. But yeah, just looking at the top drivers tool, Bubba's got the highest floor projection and the also highest ceiling projection. That typically leads to kind of a good play, even with ownership, even with the price being appropriate on FanDuel, very cheap on DK, but always just in any sport, even I know we can chase something like that. So seems like some safety and some upside in that play. Who else do we like from this top tier on the, again, going by FanDuel pricing? The next group is Ross Chastain, Joey Logano, Kyle Larson, William Byron, and Kyle Busch, let's say, the guys between 12 and 10,000 here. It looks like there's kind of a broad spectrum of guys. They all project out between 48 and 35 points on FanDuel, and a pretty broad range of ownership, going from the high 30s to the low to 12 for Logano. Oh, excuse me, 16 for Logano, mid 30s for Busch, 16 for Logano. I was looking at the wrong column. Who do you like from that group of drivers?
Yeah, so in this range here, I have a little bit of Joey Logano just because he's a great plate racer, but even then he basically has to win the race to be optimal. He's in that same situation as Chase Elliott. I'm completely crossing off Kyle Larson today. He's $500 cheaper than Joey. He's just not a good plate racer. He's already locked into the playoffs. Talking about an average finish of 22nd place the past few seasons, these track types, I'm pretty comfortable just zeroing out Kyle Larson. And we've actually seen in the past over on DraftKings where the pole setters won the race before Daytona and he's still not in the optimal. There's just not enough place differential points where it works out. So feel pretty good about zero Kyle Larson. But Ross Chastain's the guy I'm looking to target. He's a pretty good plate racer. We've seen that so far this year. He was the first guy that wrecked out at Daytona earlier this season where he finished 40th. But if you look past that, second at Atlanta, first at Talladega, and then second at Atlanta again. So 3 for 3 and finishing inside the top 2 at tracks that he hasn't had incidents at. So I'm liking him quite a bit in tournaments. He's kind of in that sweet spot where he's starting 12th, so he's not a major PD play, and people are going to flock to guys like Blaney, Hamlin, Bubba, but you can get a nice little ownership discount on Chastain, who could very easily win this race.
Okay, so looking at Chastain, and for 1,500 less, a little bit more popular, William Byron. Do you have a favorite between those two drivers?
So I do have a little bit more William Byron, but I think as far as compared to what I am at the field, I have more leverage on Ross Chastain. But Byron's a good play. It's just he's had a terrible string of luck. I think the past few months now, I want to say like one top 10 finish the past few months. It's been a rough time for William Byron, but he does have a win at a super speedway this year, absolutely dominated Atlanta. But besides that, 30th at Atlanta, 38th at Daytona, 15th at Talladega. He's a good super speedway driver. Just a lot of times he gets caught up in the mess, but that's just bad luck, and you can't really count on that. So I think Byron's a good play over on FanDuel. Like him a little bit less on DraftKings.
Okay, and let's see. I'm going to try and bounce back to the DK board, see if there are other guys who are priced up. Looks like Logano is sitting as like the 5th highest driver at 9,800. Did we not talk about any of these guys? We've got Kyle Larson up at 10,400. I see it feels like it makes even more sense to cross him off as the pole sitter over there. Tyler Reddick starting 6th, 9,700. I don't think we touched on him from the FanDuel side of things.
Yeah, so the price point on Reddick's pretty good. It's this, he does not usually fare well with the super speedways. Reading off his finishes here, 29, 39, 28, 35th. He's a bit of an aggressive driver. Like he can run well, but he does get caught up in the mess quite often, which he's already locked into the playoffs anyway. So it's not like we have anything to worry about for Reddick. So starting in 6th, he's one of those guys where basically has to win the race. A little bit more playable on FanDuel because if he finishes around the top 5, that's fine. But on DraftKings, he basically has to win.
Okay. And I know you mentioned Blaney when we were talking about the top tier there a few times, and just hearing you say the playoff guys are being locked into the playoffs a couple times over. Out of the two drivers who it was Blaney and Truex, right? And Blaney's the one that's locked in. Any concern about him potentially taking his foot off the gas a little bit just because of getting locked into the playoffs this week?
Yeah, so I actually did do a little bit of research on that. And he said in an interview that he is not concerned about that. He's going to go to his full potential. So we're all systems going Ryan Blaney. And that's right from his mouth. So,
okay. All right. Can't get a better source than that. I like it.
Right.
Let's knock out another quick piece of business here on the board. See what we got to talk about. Our pals over at PrizePicks. Awesome. Love talking PrizePicks. It's a great site. It's prop-based contests. So it's not the same as like these DraftKings FanDuel type contests where you're building lineups. You're going up against sharks like Alex Awesemo Baker and playing against people with fancy optimizers and big mass entries where they're throwing 150 lineups against the one that you can afford to put in there. You are making prop-based picks of your own, putting in a card where if you put in a 5-player lineup and you hit all 5 picks, that can nail you up to 10 times your entry fee. It's a pretty good site. It's a ton of fun to play. They've got a lot of really broad range of different kinds of picks. You can make cross sport picks. So if you like something from NASCAR, if you like something from baseball tonight, you like something from the NFL preseason, throw it all together on the same card. Like I said, 5 of them correct gets you 10 times your entry fee. And it's not like making a big, like 5-leg parlay either, because you can have ones where you get 4 out of 5 right and you still get paid. So one leg doesn't necessarily kill you over there. It's a great site. You can check it out via the description below. There's a link down there, prizepicks.com. You can navigate over there yourself, or you can download the PrizePicks app in the App Store or on Google Play. And I didn't prepare any picks because I don't know any better. So, Chris, do you have any PrizePicks picks in mind for tonight?
Yeah, so I was looking at a few earlier today, and I was liking the over on Ross Chastain at 31.5 NASCAR points. That's basically banking on him getting a top 11, top 10 finish, which certainly possible. Like I said, the incident-free races that Ross Chastain's been at the Super Speedways this year has not finished worse than second. Now, I can't project him to finish in the top 2, but he does typically run pretty well. I like the under on the Kyle Larson 30.5 NASCAR points, which we talked about, just a pretty poor Super Speedway racer. That's basically him finishing outside the top 10, which I'd say is a pretty safe bet. And the last one I was looking at is Eric Almirola, who we've yet to talk about because he's cheap, but we will talk about him quite a bit coming up. But I like the over at 40.5 fantasy points, which is basically him getting a top 16 finish. And he's a very good super speed racer, finished 5th at Daytona earlier in the year. I'm not sure if those numbers changed. I can't get the PrizePicks site to load on my end right now, but if they didn't change, I do like those stuff.
Okay, that's a solid block of picks right there. And then if anybody wants to make a cross sport, I don't know what Brandon Woodruff's strikeout prop is against the Cubbies tonight, but I like the over. So there you go. You can grab some prizepicks.com, download their app from the App Store, from Google Play. Check them out, guys. It's a great site. I think we've actually got a promo there that I should read too, because it gets you a $100 free match deposit bonus on your first deposit. So that's also kind of important. Promo code AWESOMO, all caps, all one word, the old name of the site. Check them out over at PrizePicks, guys. All right, let's jump into this middle tier of drivers. Looks like, pretty decent range of drivers who some of these guys are starting high and project pretty poorly, and they're not drawing a ton of attention. And then we get down into like the super cheap tier. So where are you going from outside of like those top end drivers? We've got like Truex, who is chasing that playoff spot, needs just to, hold off any new winner, but I'm sure would like to just win this himself, or at least put himself in a good position. So what are you doing with like a guy like Truex, a guy like Austin Cindric, who's sitting right there? And then who do you like from these guys that don't look like they rank out all that well, but seem like they're going to have to be in play at least a little bit?
Yeah, outside of Truex and Cindric, this like upper 7K to 9K range on FanDuel does get pretty ugly. But as far as Truex and Cindric are concerned, I have pretty similar ownership on both of them. Usually I hate Truex at super speedways, but so far this year, he's actually been one of the more consistent drivers at them, which is good for him because he's going to need a pretty solid race today. And obviously he's going to need some luck on his side for no new winners, but I wouldn't say it's completely impossible for him to win this race. Some of the overall better numbers over the past 4 super speedways this season, but Austin Cindric is a guy I do like quite a bit in tournaments. I believe I wrote him up in the Osmo or Stokastic tournament article, if I remember correctly. If I didn't, I still like him. But he won the Daytona 500. Did I?
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Cindric finds himself in no man's land as far as starting position is concerned, where most people, and you can find that article up on the site. Right. Click over to stokastic.com, guys.
Appreciate that. So yes, I do like Cindric today. He won the Daytona race earlier in the season. He is a rookie, so I mean, that was very impressive what he did, but the Team Penske cars tend to run very well at these track types. If you don't know who Team Penske is, that's Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, 2 of the best plate racers in all of NASCAR. So it's always nice to have those kind of teammates on your side. He's got a couple of top 5s at the super speedways this year. I think he's an excellent pivot off of Truex, who I believe was getting more ownership the last time I looked when I was crunching.
Okay. And is that something where you expect a little team racing? It looks like those guys are starting relatively near one another. So they're going to be doing a little bit of team racing through the middle of that pack as they approach the front.
Yeah, I do think Cindric and Blaney should try to get up to Joey Logano at some point, and they typically do try to form a train and lead some laps early on.
Okay. Little known fact, I went to grammar school with Jay Penske, one of the scions of the Penske family.
Oh, yeah.
I did. That's a true story. Yep. I went to his house. I got dropped off at his house. My dad loves telling this story when I was, 9 years old. Never went to his house before. Huge house. My dad accidentally pulled up and dropped me off at like the servants' quarters, like off in the corner. He was like, and as he was pulling up, he was like, wow, look at the size of this house. This is impressive. So Different worlds.
For sure.
That was a fun one. All right, let's take a look at who's the rest of this board here. Guys in like the 8,500 range on the FanDuel slate. You mentioned, not really all that appealing. Guys like Reddick, guys like Chris Bell, Alex Bauman, Daniel Suarez, not really drawing much ownership, not really drawing major top 5 percentages, but in the 9 to 10% range of being in the top 5. Ricky Stenhouse in that group. Ricky Stenhouse at least starting 20th. Maybe there's a little bit on the bone there. Looks like he projects out a little bit better than those guys. Is he the best play from that 78 to 88 group?
Yeah, Stenhouse is the guy I definitely have the most exposure to. I know the finishes aren't always there for him, but he's actually one of the better plate racers. Now, he's not great at getting good finishes, and I can read off his finishes that he's had this year: 31st, 30th, 31st, 28th. That's very, very bad. But if you look past the numbers, he actually runs close to the front, if not getting up front. But Ricky's one of those guys. I know me and Jason always his nickname is Ricky Spenhouse for a reason. He does spend quite a bit at these track types. He's very cheap on DraftKings, very easy to get to him over there on FanDuel, starting in 20th. Probably need him to contend for a top 10 to be optimal, but it's possible. He's one of those guys that's in the hunt, but that does make me a little bit worrisome because he's a very, very aggressive driver.
Okay, and what about some of the guys from that group that are starting more toward the front? The Reddick, Bell, Bauman, Suarez guys all starting from 10 or higher in the group here. Any love for any of those guys? They're all drawing 10% or less in terms of FanDuel ownership.
Yeah, I'm not really getting to much of these guys whatsoever. I think Bowman's the one I have the most to, just because he's in a Hendrick car and they tend to have some speed at these kind of track types, and maybe you can get up there with Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson at some point. But I mean, these guys really just aren't looking that great for me. I mean, they pretty much got to get close to a top 3 or win the race to be optimal, especially on the DraftKings side of things. It's easier to get to them on FanDuel than it is on DraftKings, but I'm pretty low overall.
Okay. Yeah. And I was just about to ask if any of that group was a little bit more appealing on the DK slate. Is Stenhouse a little bit more appealing over there where he's 6,200 and still only drawing 12% ownership? Does that make a difference for you?
Yeah, it's like, yes, he is cheap, but like I said, when I'm building lineups this weekend, it's so easy to leave money on the table. So I'm not really needing to just completely go for value, but I still am above. You said I'm coming in 11, 12% still right now?
Yeah, that was the last update I had on the driver's tool. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm currently at 16%. So it looks like I'm trying to get a little bit of leverage there.
Okay. So getting a little bit more on that value play makes sense. Let's see. So going down the list here again by the FanDuel scoring, a couple of guys who are projecting out even lower than that group, but I don't know. It doesn't look like there's a ton of value here. They're all starting in that same range, 9th, 8th, 11th with McDowell, Chris Buescher, and Eric Jones. But at least you're paying a lower price. You're down to 1,000 less if you're going down to Eric Jones. Any love for those guys at, again, 5 to 7% owned and a little bit lower cost, or are they kind of the same read as what you just gave for those others?
So it's actually a pretty interesting group because all 3 of these guys could use a win to get into the playoffs, and they're actually all 3 pretty good plate racers for the most part. But my favorite one of the bunch here is Eric Jones. He offers you a couple more PD spots compared to the other 2 concerning Michael McDowell and Chris Buescher. But Jones has had some really good numbers at these track types this year. He actually has the 3rd best average running position, only behind Blaney, only behind Chase Elliott, which is pretty good company to be in. He's got a top 5 at 1 this year. He's got a couple top 10s. He won at Daytona in the past. He wasn't a JGR car, but still, equipment doesn't really matter too much at a track like this. So I'm getting some positive leverage. I'm above 15% on DraftKings, and I believe I'm above 15, 16% over on FanDuel. So looking to get some leverage there. McDowell and Buescher are fine, but again, these guys basically have to get top 5 finishes, which is possible, but I'd rather get to Eric Jones personally.
Okay. And it sounds like you're getting basically double the field on Jones. You under the field on McDowell Buescher then? Just like taking a couple shares wherever you get them and not really chasing the 5 even?
Yeah, I think I tried to get even to I think I'm a little bit under. I think I'm at 6%, which I believe they were projecting to be 7% on FanDuel last time I was crunching. So it's basically
okay. All right, so let's drop down and talk about a couple more relevant drivers now. The $6,000 tier. Brad Keselowski, Austin Dillon. We'll go to Kevin Harvick at 6,200, who's drawing a little bit less attention because of where he's starting, I guess, because of how he projects. And then into Eric Almirola and Chase Briscoe, who go from 6,000 to 5,800 on the FanDuel pricing. It looks like at least 4 out of those 5 drivers are interesting plays on this slate, drawing mid-teens ownership, decent percentages, approaching 20% of being in that top 5. Do you have a favorite from that group of drivers?
Yeah, so we're starting to get into the range where there's a ton of good plays because these are where all the place differential plays are starting to come out. But Brad Keselowski is going to be my favorite of the bunch here. He's one of those drivers that's going to have to win this race. And he's a really good plate racer. He used to be on Team Penske, which, like I said, they usually are always in the past. We're running these types of tracks, running up front, leading laps and dominating. He was great at Daytona earlier in the season. I believe he led like the first 30 laps, if I remember correctly. Might be mistaken, but finished top 10 at Daytona early in the year, finished 12th at Atlanta, 23rd at Dega, 18th at Atlanta. That's positive place differential from where he's starting from the times we've raced at a track like this year. So I'm liking Kess quite a bit. He's in my cash lineup on both sites. There's top 5 potential, if not race winning potential.
Okay. If I put Keselowski and Eric Jones as the first 2 drivers into a FanDuel lineup, that leaves me with $12,000 to spend on each of the remaining 3 drivers. Is that a differentiated enough lineup just based on those 2 guys? And can you go basically to the chalk, grab Bubba, grab some of those more expensive guys? Is that differentiated enough, or do you like to work in a third driver who might be owned in between those guys? Because Keselowski's getting 23%, but you're getting an offset with Jones at 7%. Do you like to hunt somebody in like maybe the 12% range as one of those last 3, or can you go to the chalk with those differentiators?
I think on FanDuel, with there only being 1 or 5 drivers compared to 6 on DraftKings, I think just having that one differentiator there, like Eric Jones, would probably be good enough for I think you said a single entry tournament, I believe.
That's just one entry into the main tournament. Like I said, I hand built 3 lineups for the big tournament. I'll throw away my $23 or whatever it is. And if we hit, we hit. Okay. Just for the fun of it. It seemed like a fun race. And like I said, I'm probably going to try and watch it. It's nothing else going on later. I'll be flipping between this and baseball, I think.
Yeah, so
let's talk about let's see, what about from the group of Dylan Almirola and Chase Briscoe there then? Are those guys all viable? It seems like they're all drawing you mid-teens ownership on the FanDuel slate, decent percentages of being top 5. You mentioned Keselowski the favorite, but are you getting to around the field on these guys? Are you undercutting anybody specifically?
Yeah, I like Austin Dillon quite a bit. I like Chase Briscoe. I like Eric Almirola. Not getting too much Kevin Harvick. Not saying he's going to be terrible in this race. This is the cheapest I've ever seen him on FanDuel at $6,200. But he's just starting so high up, it's kind of hard to get to him too much. But trying to pull up my FanDuel exposures here. I think on Austin Dillon, I have Eric Almirola, I got 25% currently. Eric Almirola, or Austin Dillon, I got 16.5%. And then I believe on Kevin Harvick, I am under 10% right now. So, yeah.
Okay. So a little well beyond the field on Almirola, right around the field with Dillon. So let's talk Harvick. Is the low ownership and the low projection basically a product of where he's starting this race in 7th? Is there something going on there that he's not projecting out well, or is it just the starting?
Yeah.
Spot?
Yeah, he's not elite plate racer. Like, he's fine at getting good finishes. Finished 12th at Atlanta, 10th at Talladega recently, but that's not going to get the job done today. He's going to have to finish basically inside the top 4, top 3, and I think it's likely that he does not do that. He's already got a couple wins under his belt, so it's not like he has to go completely balls to the wall to win this race.
Okay. Malakar in chat asks a good question. He says, help out a rookie. And there might be people who, like me, are somewhat new to NASCAR and don't really know exactly all these different terms. He's asking, is a plate race where there is a resistor plate to keep everyone the same?
Yeah, so they used to use a restrictor plate. They now use the tapered spacer. I'm just so used to saying restrictor plates, so you have to excuse me to say that. But it basically, where you'll see some races where there's a driver that gets 1, 2, 3 seconds ahead of the field and you can't catch them. At a track like this, it promotes pack racing where everyone's drafting off of one another. We're not going to see a driver get away from the field and just completely dominate the race. They're all going to be interchanging. We're going to see lanes, the top lanes working. We're going to see the bottom lane working. So it's basically what it is, but they now use a tapered spacer. Okay,
excellent. Malakar, thanks for dropping that question into chat. Guys, if you have more questions, drop them into chat. We'll pick them up in the next, got about 15 minutes left, only one more plug to read and a few more drivers to talk about. So drop us some questions. We do have a super chat from John Jefferson, dropped this $4.99. He says, Chris, playing in a 10-person, $666 entry today, who is your favorite low, mid, and high dollar entry on FanDuel? Thanks so much. I normally play $7. So big step up in class here for John. He wants to know your favorite guy from each tier, low, middle, and high on FanDuel.
I would say you didn't pick the greatest race to go, but
embrace the chaos, John.
Right. But for me, I'd have to go, if it's FanDuel, Bubba Wallace, take the safety net there. As far as the mid-range is concerned, I like Brett Keselowski quite a bit. And as far as a cheap driver goes, if we can consider Eric Almirola below nearly $6,000, I would say that's probably my favorite for a cheap driver.
Okay. And just like you said, it's going to be a chaotic race. So just, we got to embrace that. Maybe leave some cash on the table as you're building that lineup. You've heard Chris mention a few times during the strategy or during the show here that it's not necessarily the most important thing to spend all your cash, but you did say that it's a little bit more important on the FanDuel slate. You're spending a little bit more of your salary over there, correct?
Yeah, because finishing position is a little bit more important. So I'm getting the more Blaney's and Hamlins of the road.
Okay. Gotcha. Let's take a look at the old run sheet here and see what else I got to read. We did the PrizePicks conversation, but guys, again, if you're looking for something new to check out, PrizePicks. If you live in a state where you can't make prop bets in terms of, going to a sports book and making prop bets, check out PrizePicks. I'm unfortunately the reverse. I live in Jersey. I can make prop bets that I don't really do. I would love to play on PrizePicks, but I can't. But if you can play on PrizePicks, go check them out. We are running at Stokastic. We're running the NFL preseason promo. The NFL preseason is well underway at this point. We're running through tomorrow the Herbert promo for $7. You can get access to the rest of the preseason for preseason projections. That's all brought to you by Matt Kajeski and all his expertise. So use promo code Herbert, all caps, all one word, at checkout on the NFL preseason package. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. No more plugs, all race and talk the rest of the way. We've got some value plays to talk about on the board here. Let's see. We went through Almirola. We went through Chase Briscoe. So now we're down into this 500s tier where there's some scattered ownership, some guys who project out with, reasonable numbers like Corey LaJoie sitting at 4,500, a 34-point projection, where there are guys who are 3 times the price basically that are projecting out the same way. So how much are you going to these super value guys? And is there anybody who really stands out from that value tier for you?
Before that, I just want to mention really quick, I saw a tweet from Bob Packrass on Twitter. It looks like having a on-time start time is not going to happen. There's still standing water on the track and it's raining currently. So we can probably expect DraftKings to get pushed back if anyone's getting stressed about crunching. But anyway, getting into the value guys here from underneath Eric Almirola, I believe we're going under Chase Briscoe, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So Justin Haley is one of my favorite plays to look at in tournaments. He's not getting that much ownership today, but he's actually one of the better plate racers in this series. I know he doesn't have quite the name value, but he's $5K on FanDuel, $64 on DraftKings. The past 3 finishes at super speedways: 7th at Atlanta, 12th at Dega, then 11th at Atlanta earlier in the year. And he's actually averaging the second most DraftKings points per race of all drivers the past few seasons at these track types, only behind Corey LaJoie. And that just goes to show you why you should stack the back, where all these cheap drivers in the back score a lot of points. I think that's the best way to put it. But I like Haley a lot in tournaments. And then Corey LaJoie, like I just mentioned, he's actually averaging the most DraftKings points per race. He also has the 4th best average finish of all drivers. Corey LaJoie is one of those guys that's really good at riding around the back and then just taking the good finish that he can get. So 2 of the guys I'm looking to target a lot in the back here. Okay.
And is that why he's the first guy? He's the first guy that's just out of the playoffs, right? He's the first guy who, even if he wins this race, can't make the playoffs.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
maybe playing a little too safe sometimes.
I think someone told me on his podcast, he has a Stacking Pennies podcast, where I think he said he's not going to try to get up to the front and race hard because he's not eligible for the playoffs, but that's fine by me. I don't want you to be up front. I just want you to chill. Take your 10 spots at the end of the race and I'll be happy with it.
All right. Yeah. Pick up a little place differential and end of the day. That's okay. That's one approach to racing, I guess. Not trying to win necessarily. What about the play that we mentioned from the top? He was drawing a little bit of attention. The thing that stood out to me was the floor score that is popping up on our top drivers tool for Noah Gragson. And he's only 3,500 with a 28-point FanDuel floor and a 47-point ceiling. It's not the ceiling that the rest of these drivers get to, but for 3,500 as compared to, a Bubba Wallace for 12.5, he doesn't need to have Bubba's 66-point ceiling there. So are you getting the shares of Gragson? And if so, why is he only going 5% owned at 3,500?
Yeah, it's very surprising to me. I think maybe over on FanDuel, people just maybe don't need as much place differential, but he's currently my cash lineup over on FanDuel. He projects quite well for me on DraftKings. He's a cash game lock. I expect him to be pretty high owned over there as well. I did not look at the ownership projections from the last run, but as of right now, was he at currently?
7% on DK. So very, very similar.
Okay. Yeah, I think that should be higher. So I definitely want to be overweight on that. I have like 45% Gragson today on DraftKings. Over on FanDuel, I got around 30%. So I am very comfortable being way over in the field on him. He does not need to do much to hit value whatsoever. I know the finishes haven't been great for him at super speedways, but we can kind of just chalk that up to bad luck. Finish 20th at Talladega. If he finishes 20th today, that's 17 spots gained, and that is a great day on both sides.
Okay. So he doesn't have to even make that much of a dent in where he's starting this race to where he's going to finish it. Does he have to finish the race? Can he wreck out of this race and still make a dent on the FanDuel slate at 3,500?
So if there's a big one and he's not in the first big one, that's a lot of spots gained. So he can wreck out after that. If he finishes 23rd in wrecks, that's still fine. I'm not sure that'll be quite optimal over on FanDuel, but if you're playing in a cash game format, that should be good enough. Like if you're looking at DraftKings, for Gragson to hit 40 points today, that's a 20th place finish. I certainly think that's possible.
Okay. Interesting setup where you might not even have to finish to deliver a little bit of value there. That's interesting. What about anybody else from this group that you want to call out? We've got about 8-9 minutes left. We'll take a couple questions if any dropped into either the Discord chat or the YouTube chat. Anybody else from this group to call out, or anything that you want to say, strategy wise? Like, does the delayed start in the rain make any impact to the strategy, to the approach to the race, or is it just more time to build lineups?
And just more time to build lineups. Unfortunately, I don't think FanDuel ever pushes back lock, but DraftKings is usually right up to date, pushing that back. But these guys are all good plays. Like there's really not much differentiating these guys. If there's a bunch of wrecks, which there always is at Daytona, they're going to move up and gain spots because you're not really expecting them to be running up front, jockeying for position and being in the wrecks. These are the kind of guys that benefit from it the most. I would say my favorite of this bunch is David Reagan. He's obviously not in great equipment, but he was in the optimal at Daytona earlier in the year. Starting in 34th, if he can just avoid wrecks like Noah Gragson and take a top 20 finish, he's well on his way to being close to optimal.
Okay. Are there guys from this tier of, like, let's say from like Briscoe at 5,800 on FanDuel down? Are there guys that can finish in the top 12 here? I know we're looking for some of those high finishes. Are there guys that can get up that high, or is it really just about the place differential and then finishing the race for, very cheap?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I mean, it's simply put, but everybody here has a chance to finish top 12 in this race. I believe we've seen BJ McLeod finish in the top 10 in the super speedway before, top 12. So it's really just the name of the game is avoiding wrecks. And if you're there at the end of the race and your car isn't limping, even if it's limping, sometimes you can finish in the top 10. These races get pretty bad pretty quick at the end.
Okay. So even a couple guys like BJ McLeod, Cody Ware from the very bottom of the board for 2,500, worthy of a dart throw if you need that price savings because you've built a lineup that starts with the 3 most expensive drivers or something like that. They're on the board at least to that degree.
Yeah, me and Jason always talk about it. We typically always cross these guys out, but at a track like Daytona FanDuel, or a track like Daytona on DraftKings and FanDuel, I mean, I have about, I believe 5 to 10% of them on DraftKings. Over on FanDuel, I've got about 3-ish%, but that's more than I normally always play. I mean, they have a legit chance to be optimal today.
All right. I like it. Emac in the chat calling me out for using the phrase, can he make a dent during a NASCAR show? I like it. Let's see. Carmi Colburn says, Chris, how about the 18 car today, bud? I need Rowdy to come back.
I mean, he's in a good spot. He's starting 22nd today. I like him more on FanDuel than I do on DraftKings. Like I said, I like those big name drivers starting mid-pack a little bit more on the FanDuel side of things because the finishing position upside is more there, more relevant compared to DraftKings. But overall, fine play. He tends to run very well at these track types, but usually gets caught up in the mess quite often.
Okay. Jay Lopez wants to know, is Truex and Blaney safe for single entry plays today? Or maybe that's R. I'm not sure if he means both in the same lineup or if he means like, are they both?
Yeah, I mean, they're both fine plays today, but I can't call anybody safe, especially starting inside the top 20. The safe plays are starting 24th on back. If you're starting in the top 20, no matter what your name is, you're not a safe play today.
Okay. So maybe go to some of those guys who are just cruising with their foot halfway down on the gas and letting everybody wreck out in front of them. Let's see. We had Jim Parrish asking Blaney, Wallace, and Almirola as a core. Your thoughts on that as just a kind of a lineup core, no site given?
That's fine with me. I like Ryan Blaney again. You got to be a little bit careful because he is starting 16th. There's plenty of downside there, but he's arguably the best super speed racer in NASCAR. You got to love Bubba today, and Almirola is a fine play as well. So I don't have a problem with that.
All righty. $10 super chat from Jorge. We appreciate that. Jorge, one of the regulars around the site. Any drivers you're not getting at all, or you have them less than 5% in your lineup? So what are the guys that you're, basically crossing off?
Let me check my exposures here. So this is on DraftKings. I have 1% Bell, like 2% Busher, same with McDowell, under 5% Custer. So those are the kind of guys that not just getting much to it all.
Okay. All right. It's good luck over there, Jorge. Thanks for the super chat. We really appreciate it. Hit the like, the subscribe, all those good things, guys. Man EC says, opinion on Briscoe on DK.
Overall, a very solid play. I'm not going to call him super safe because he's starting inside the top 30, but he is an overall safer play. I got a good chunk of him right around 30% for this slate, which I feel pretty good about. Might be slightly overweight. We'll see where he comes in, but I mean, Briscoe is starting in the back of the pack. I believe he finished, I want to say, third at Daytona earlier this season. Let me pull up his finish here. So Chase Briscoe, Daytona 500, he finished in, third place. So if he does that again, he's going to be knocking the lineup, but he's definitely a top 10 contender.
And if you were building a DK cash lineup that already had Jones in it, would you go to Briscoe or would you go to Chastain?
If I already have Jones, I think I'm going to have to drop the Briscoe. Like, I love Chastain today as a tournament play, potentially winning the race, but I don't want to get too heavy on guys in the top 12.
Okay. So Mitchell Tyler, that answer was for you there. We appreciate all the questions there, guys. I'll jump over to Discord, see if anything's popped up in the Discord chat. Dog's going nuts over here. Perrin was one of the big winners the other day in baseball. He's asking thoughts on getting to this group of guys: Justin Haley, Ricky Stenhouse, Cole Custer. I think we talked about liking at least two of those guys. So you want to just knock that out again for Perrin?
Yeah, so it's a pretty risky group there. It's obviously going to be a tournament aspect, but I am fine with that. I really like Justin Haley today, though. He's one of my favorite tournament plays, starting in 18th, has legit top 10 upside. Custer is basically getting zero ownership today. He's starting in a really weird spot. So if you're just trying to get leverage on the field, I'm fine with that. And who was the third driver? Ricky Stenhouse?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of those guys where it's wreckers or checkers, so you just got to hope you're on the right side of the coin flip.
All right, excellent. Let's see what else has popped up. That was it for Discord. A little quiet in the Discord, guys, but if you got any more questions, you're gonna drop them in. We've got 2-3 minutes left. Looks like we answered everything in the YouTube here. So, Chris, overall, top 3 favorite driver plays on each site.
So over on DraftKings, my highest owned guys currently are Bubba Wallace, Noah Gragson, Eric Almirola, just eating the place differential there. Now, again, I'm a little bit underweight on Bubba compared to what his ownership is projected at, but I still like him quite a bit today. And then over on the FanDuel side of things, I am currently the highest on Wallace again. I think that's kind of a gimme. Then I have Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney. So as you can see, like I said, those kind of guys pop up more for me on the FanDuel side of things, but the way the scoring is, and then on DraftKings, I'm much lower on.
Okay. And it sounds like, I mean, out of everybody we've talked about, it sounds to me like Gragson, if he has a good race here, he's going to be the guy that a lot of Stokastic logos are going to be carried to the top by in this race. It sounds like you're well overweight to him. Is that like your favorite play that the field is probably asleep on this slate? Is that your favorite sneaky play on this slate, in addition to just being one of your highest owned?
Yeah, I mean, you got to play Noah Gragson, in my opinion. I don't think there's any reason he should come in that low owned. We're talking about a guy starting dead last at the super speedway, and Gragson doesn't suck. I mean, he's not in a bad car for this kind of race. And as long as he doesn't wreck out early on, he's definitely capable of getting top 15, top 20. If he does that, he's going to absolutely kill it.
All right. Excellent. Are there any drivers, Kelsey Beers asked, are there any drivers going to the rear? If yes, someone in the top 10 moving to the back, would that change your exposure?
I don't believe we saw anybody going to the rear, but it would mean absolutely nothing to me. This is one of those tracks where you can go from 1st to 30th back to 15th in the matter of a couple laps. So it doesn't matter. All
right. I think that will bring us basically up to the end, guys. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. Chris, anybody to who's going to win this race?
Well, if I could pick the winner at Daytona, I would love to know. But if I had to pick anybody to win, it's probably going to be Ryan Blaney. The best, I think he's personally the best super speed racer, but I wouldn't count on it. All right, there you go. He said it. Bet your house on Ryan Blaney today to win. Yeah, totally. Guys, we really appreciate everybody hanging out. We appreciate all the questions, the super chats, and everything. Make sure you check out PrizePicks, our great sponsor. Make sure you hit the like, the subscribe. That helps us out a lot. I will be right back in 5 minutes with Gundacker to talk all about the baseball slate. So I got to do some lineup updating, maybe refill the coffee, maybe let the dog out. Chris, tell everybody where they can find you on the Twitters and so on and so forth. Yeah, you can find me over on Twitter at Chris Pennell 16. If you ever have any questions, shoot them my way, and I'll hopefully see them. I'd love to answer your question. There you go. And not to mention, he's got some killer content up on the site at Stokastic.com. So click over there, check out his article, and check out Phil's stuff. There's some killer stuff. Help me ask some hopefully good questions on this one. I've been Terry McBride. That's Chris Pennell. We appreciate you guys. We'll see you around. Good luck today.